Good afternoon. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce to you a woman named Betty Tisdale, who may be better described by her moniker, the Angel of Saigon. Betty Tisdale was born in New York in 1932 and lived what most would call an all American life. She was well enough educated and grew up to become a secretary. It was while she was working as a secretary for New York Senator Jacob Javits that Betty met a physician named Dr. Tom Dooley. As a naval doctor, Dr. Dooley had set up medical clinics throughout Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and even established an orphanage in An Loc, Saigon. Deeply encouraged by his altruistic philosophy of helping others, Betty quickly assumed running the orphanage upon the untimely death of Dr. Dooley from cancer at only age 34. It was during this time that she decided, in order to better support the orphanage that was now a part of Dr. Dooley's legacy, that she would need to do so in person. By 1975, the security situation in Saigon had begun to deteriorate. Betty, determined to not simply stand by and do nothing, became a driving force behind what would be called Operation Baby Lift. Operation Baby Lift turned out to be a massive success that helped evacuate thousands of Vietnamese orphans and bring them to the United States. I'd like to take just a moment and read a brief excerpt from Betty's diary during this time. In 1975, when Saigon was falling, I left my 10 children and headed for Vietnam, determined to rescue the children at An Loc. I had no idea how, but that had never stopped me before. Because I was not an adoption agency, I did not have access to military planes to provide for Operation Baby Lift. I had called Pan Am, but the fee was so cost prohibitive we couldn't go in that direction. And where would the babies go once I got them to the States? Because Fort Benning was in my home state of Georgia, I called the general there. He did not return my calls. So I called the Secretary of the Army. He did not return my calls. So I called his mother. I told her I was leaving for Vietnam in the morning, and I begged her to help me. When I got to An Loc, I promised Madame Nye that I would save our children. I went to the office of the ambassador, and I begged for their lives. He said that if I gave him a list of names, and if each baby had a birth certificate and a legal name, he would get me an Air Force plane. I said, no problem, and raced off to the local hospital. This is just an example of some of the things that Betty did to get the children from Vietnam to the United States. But Betty's work never stopped at An Loc. Over the years, Betty continued her efforts, helping to establish organizations that focused on the well-being and future of displaced children, not only in Vietnam, but in Mexico, Colombia, and Afghanistan. She became a fierce advocate for the rights of children, and through her work, she not only changed the futures of countless children, but also inspired others to action. Betty's legacy is a powerful reminder that one person can, in fact, make a tremendous difference in the lives of others. And what I have learned most from Betty is what I hope you also have taken away from this brief introduction. Compassion and action must go hand in hand, and never let yourself be reduced to the idea that there's nothing you can do. Thank you so much for listening.